We met all those years ago in 1951 at the library on Salter, across the street from Morley's childhood home, right near St. John's. He spent a lot of time at the library, in fact. They met there and saw each other again at the beach and started dating. They dated for 7 years, even while he went away to dentistry school in Toronto. Through that time, Lil worked as a lab tech and came to visit him when she could. When they married, after his graduation, it was one of the first weddings at the brand new B'nai Abraham Synagogue. They rented an apartment downtown for a short time and then bought the house on Mathers Bay West, where they lived for 60 years. During the years that he worked, Morley came home for lunch every day. They enjoyed a social life with friends, the fact that both of them stayed active, their annual winter vacations, whether it was to Hawaii or spots in the Caribbean, and of course one particularly memorable 3-week trip they took to Israel in 1972. They raised their daughters, they became grandparents. Morley became Zeta Mo, a role he was of course perfectly suited to with his brand of humor, because dad humor becomes Zeta humor with like a little bit of a twist just because the younger audience doesn't appreciate how bad the jokes are. They turned that chance meeting at the library on Salter into a family, and they got to enjoy that every single day. Another great Morley Slonim story. I've learned that like a good Slonim, Morley loved a good routine. He lived an intentional, purposeful life day by day. He enjoyed the simple pleasures. He was not a fancy guy. But he was so appreciative. He had such gratitude for everything he had. He had a positive attitude with his playful sense of humor always front and center. He kept busy and found passions in the projects he could tackle around the house. And he approached life with a great deal of practicality, something that's ironically not so common, and certainly not to be taken for granted, common sense. He had all the attributes that make a mensch: kind, loyal, devoted, loving. He made a positive impression on people. Most recently attested to by the nurses at the Grace Hospital who took an instant liking to him when he was there. This is of course fitting for his Hebrew name, Meir, which means one who shines. Never loving to accept help at the best of times, Morley was also a fighter, especially in this last year as he fought against getting old. I'm told he would always talk about tomorrow or make a joke. Now it's our hope and our prayer that any suffering he may have had to endure is over, and that Morley is at peace. May he rest in peace, and may his memory be a blessing. Now let's hear more stories about him from his grandson Justin, and then his daughters Shaarey and Marty. So this way. Yeah, the way you're going.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I want to express my gratitude to each of you who have gathered today to honor the life and memory of my Zeta, Morley Slonim. I was exceptionally blessed to have over 30 years with my Zeta, and it has been truly difficult to conceptualize moving forward in a world where that is no longer the case. My Zeta touched the lives of so many with his warmth and wisdom, but most especially with his wit. He was always available at a moment's notice if there was anything I ever needed, whether it was sports, school, birthdays, holidays, Friday dinner, weekend lunch, or just a Thursday afternoon. I knew I could always count on him. He cared deeply about me and each of his grandchildren, and would take the time to ask about our lives in great detail, and was always there to commiserate with laughter when times were tough. Zeta had a way of making us each feel special. Whether it was his playful jokes, his comforting presence, or his sage advice, he touched our lives in countless ways. He taught us the importance of patience, the value of hard work, and the joy of simple pleasures. And if there was anything that my Zeta perfected over the years, it was the art of a routine joke. Whether it was being glad that we came for dinner, Otherwise, he wouldn't have eaten that day, or remarking that one of the grandchildren called, and he was bound to have a good day now that Baba was happy. I can't count the number of times I've heard the same material recycled, and yet it's hard to imagine that I've heard these jokes for the last time. It's also true that my Zeta told many jokes that only he understood, but regardless, I was always entertained by the simple fact that he was entertained, and thankful that my Baba knew when to jump in and communicate on his behalf to whatever server was waiting patiently. As a fellow teller of jokes that no one else understands, I always felt a special connection with my Zeta. I am grateful for a lifetime of love and support, and especially that I have so many fond memories to look back on. My childhood was filled with time spent with my Baba and Zetas, spent at my Baba and Zetas, and in particular, I remember all the times my cousin Dylan would come into town, and how that meant I would get to spend most of my week with my grandparents, going for lunches, and playing board games together late into the night. It feels surreal that Zeta is no longer with us, as his presence has been steadfast, a simple fact in my life. Despite the struggle of grief, I am happy to know that moving forward, just as it was the case in his lifetime, something will happen that will